Hey guys, welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Elisa Ace. I'm a spiritual medium, and I like to make videos where I tell you guys about some of the evidence that pets in spirit give me in my pet readings with my clients. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about some of the evidence that a dog named Choco gave me in my reading. Choco made it to 18 years old. Choco was a family pet. So my client was still very young when her parents got this dog. So she grew up with this dog. So this dog was very important to her and the entire family. And just so you know, I will be showing pictures of the evidence that my client sent to me after the reading. So one of the things that Choco told me during the reading was that he visits his mom in dreams and that she sees him even when she's not asleep. Then he told me the words shed light and ring of light. He was giving me phrases like that. And so when I asked her, she said, yes, I see him in dreams, but also I see him when I'm in the hypnagogic state. And so that is when you're right on the edge of sleep and awake. So right before you fall asleep and the second that you wake up. She said that while she's been in the hypnagogic state, she has seen him several times, and that every time she sees him, there's either like a beautiful bright light surrounding him and behind him, or there's like a ring of light like around his head, kind of like a halo. Another thing that Choco told me was that my client would draw him and paint him. And so when I asked her if this is true, she said, yes, I love to draw. So I was constantly drawing him no matter where I was at. If I was at a restaurant, I would draw him on a napkin. I've painted a picture of him on a plate. I've sketched him. So he was just giving me another piece of evidence about the pictures that have been made of him by her. So another thing that Choco told me was banging things. So when I asked his mom, do you know what he means when he says banging things? And she said that they would always have to bang things to get his attention because he was pretty much all the way deaf. Again, he made it to 18 years old, so going deaf is to be expected. So for example, she said when she wanted to let him know that it was time to eat, she would take his little metal bowl and kind of bang it on the floor because he could hear the vibrations and know that it's time to eat. So another thing that Choco told me was that he's close with another dog in spirit. And so when I asked her, do you have another dog in spirit? She said no. And then when she said no, what came out of my mouth next was, do you have a best friend by chance? And does she have a dog in spirit? I don't know why I said that. I never asked that question. Do you have a best friend who has a dog in spirit? It just came out of my mouth. And she said, yes, I do have a best friend. And yes, her dog is in spirit. And we sometimes wonder and talk about if our dogs are in fact together. And I actually wanted to talk about this in the reading. So I'm glad that you brought that up. So when she said that, she said, is there any way that you can find out if it is in fact her dog? So I said, let me tune in and see what I can get. And so one of the first things that I heard was about a pillow. And so right away, my client had a reaction and she said, my best friend ordered a pillow that looks exactly like her dog. And then the next thing I heard was blood and prick. And she said her dog had diabetes and had to prick him to get his blood, to test the blood every day. So those were just two pieces of evidence that Choco was giving me to let me know that it was in fact her best friend's dog that he's with in spirit. So the very first thing that Choco told me about in the reading was an accident. And I thought that was very strange for him to bring up an accident as the very first thing that he tells me. And so this is a little bit too in-depth, so I actually made an entire video about this because when I asked her, can you understand why Choco's bringing up an accident? She said, yes, I asked him to bring that up. The accident happened 3 months after he crossed over, and I've been wanting to know if he had something to do with protecting me. So at the very, very end of this video, I will link that video at the top of the screen. So then Choco also told me my symbol for beach and then told me pineapple. So in my little human brain, that makes me think of Hawaii. So I asked her, first of all, have you gone to Hawaii? And she said, yes. And I said, okay, because he's bringing up a trip and he's saying pineapple. And she went, oh. And then she leaned over to the left of her, pulled something off the wall, a picture off the wall, and then showed it to me in the camera. And it's a picture of her in Hawaii. And then in the corner of the picture is a little pineapple sticker. So it is very common for pets in spirit to mention something that's in the room that's out of my line of sight. So they'll either bring up something that's on the wall. Sometimes they'll bring up something that my client is holding, but like down here. So like, like in their lap, so I can't see it. So I really love when they do that. So Choco also brought up snow and it being cold. Then he gave me an image in my mind's eye of him shivering and going for car rides. And then he showed me that he was wearing like a little puffer vest jacket kind of thing. And she said, we live in Canada. So obviously Canada is very cold. There's lots of snow. And he did in fact have a puffer jacket. So Choco also brought up a cage. And so when I asked her, did he have a cage or a crate? And is there a reason why he would be bringing that up? And she said, well, the only thing that my mom and dad kept of his was his crate. But shortly after the reading, she sent me a picture of him in his crate, in his cage. And she said, this is the picture that I have in my room. This is the picture of him that I use when I talk to him every day, when I'm praying for him. And I actually think that that's the real reason why he brought up the cage, because that's the picture that I talk to every day. And I said, yes, that's what it is. And so another thing that Choco told me was desk. And so my client is a professional. She went through a lot of schooling, so she spent a lot of time at her desk, and she would often put Choco on her lap while she was sitting at her desk. And she said she has several pictures of that. And then he would also stand on her desk. I have noticed time and time again in my readings that pets will often bring up things that my clients have pictures of. So they'll bring up like a memory or a fact, like the desk thing. And then the next thing my client will say is, oh, I have a picture of that. And I was like, I thought you might. So another thing that Choco told me was ding dong. Okay, so I want to make it clear that when a pet tells me a word or a phrase or a sentence, usually a word or a phrase, it can mean several different things. So in one reading, it might mean something, and then in a different reading, it might mean something completely different. So it's really important that me and all mediums don't jump to conclusions and make an assumption, and instead ask your client, can you understand, or how can you understand your pet saying this to me? So for example, a long time ago in another reading, I heard ding dong. And as soon as I said that, my client said, oh, my dad loved eating ding dongs and Hostess cupcakes and all those little snacky type foods. But in this case, when I asked my client, can she understand why her dog is saying ding dong? She said, no, I'm not sure why. So that's another important fact to bring up, because it is common for there to be at least one thing in a lot of my readings where the client does not understand it or remember what it means in that moment in the reading. And then they'll go home, because you're processing a lot when you're in a reading. I'm throwing a lot of information at you. You've got a lot of emotions going on. And so you may just not remember or realize what that means. And so all the time, my clients will message me back, 3 hours later saying, oh my gosh, how did I forget that? Or they'll say, I talked to my husband or my mom and I didn't know this. And so it's really important to be open-minded and just open in general. My readings with my clients that are light and my clients that are open-minded, those are the readings that go the best by far. And to be honest, it's kind of nice for them to get like a nice little nugget of evidence after the reading, either later that night or the next day. And so she couldn't think of what ding dong could mean in the moment in that reading. But then she messaged me later that night saying, I can't believe I forgot this, but me and my sister always used to push on his nose and go ding dong, ding dong. And then she said when the family went to put him to sleep and when he was on the table and he had just crossed over, she said her sister went up to him and did one last ding dong on his nose. Okay, I'm not going to cry. So another thing that Choco brought up was her graduation. And when I asked her, she said, yes, he was at my graduation party. I was carrying him. I have pictures holding him at my graduation party. I'm not going to include that picture because there are many, many family members in that picture. And so for privacy reasons, I'm not going to include that picture. But this is something that Other Pets in Spirit has brought up too. So they'll bring up graduation parties that they were in attendance for. They'll bring up weddings that they were in attendance for, birthdays, and that kind of thing, because those were special memories that they were a part of. And oftentimes my clients have pictures of it. I make these videos because I want people to know that their pets are not far. They're just in a higher frequency, but they are never far from you, and they can be with you whenever they want to. Just because they are in their spirit body and they're in the spirit world does not mean that they don't know everything that's going on in your life, because I assure you, they see everything and they hear everything that you say. You could not hide something from them even if you wanted to. If you like this kind of video, I have several more that I've done just like this one in a playlist called Evidence in Pets Readings Videos. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. So you can just go to the playlist tab on my YouTube channel and then you will see all the rest of the other videos. I have another playlist tab called Pets in Spirit, and those contain all of my videos about how to heal from pet loss and how to connect to your pets in spirit. I really hope that these videos help you. If you liked this video, please make sure to like, comment, and I would absolutely love if you shared my video. Thanks again for watching. Please make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.